Hey Shift, it's good to see you. If this is your first time here and you would like to know more about us, you can scan this QR code or the one back at the Welcome Center, and make sure that you fill out that Connect card so we can send you some free Opus coffee. Make sure to check out that Coffee with Joe option so that you can enjoy that coffee with Joe. The Gainesville Area AIDS Project is collecting food donations for Thanksgiving, so if you have any donations, you can bring those here to the building. And if you've been wanting to get a little more hands-on with helping the community, we've been invited to help. Local community leader Amy Trask is doing a public Friendsgiving from 5 to 9 p.m. at the Bull. They're still needing a couple of turkeys, so if you're willing to volunteer or donate, talk to Joe. Our next online-only service is December 1st, Thanksgiving weekend. Do not blame me if you show up. I've told you a gazillion times. Just saying. Today is the town hall at First Mag from 5:30 to 7:30. If you're looking to connect for support or advocacy, this is the place to do it. There will be local leaders and support groups for all those things and more, and it's free for anyone who wants to join. And that's all for today. Now on to week 3 of stuff I'm thinking about.
I hope that your week was as good as it possibly could be. Last week, we jumped into this idea of moving beyond polarization. And we did that by reframing the question, do we want to win? 2, do we want to heal? And it was within that reframing that we found that we have the ability to resist the urge to dehumanize others, especially the ones that we disagree with or the ones that voted against us, voted against you. And the path to that resistance is found in hope. And to illustrate that hope, we reimagined a kingdom of heaven parable around a dandelion, and it said, the kingdom of heaven is like a dandelion growing through a sidewalk. It doesn't look powerful, and it is often overlooked, yet it grows anyway, defying all odds, persistent and resilient. Even stepped on, it keeps coming back, spreading seeds on the wind. Try as you might to get rid of it, the life within it is unstoppable, finding a way in even the hardest, most unexpected places. And we resist the urge to dehumanize and further this polarization with our love and with our kindness and with our empathy. And where some would say and accuse us of being weak and those of weaknesses, they are strengths. They are the soft power that will create the cracks, allowing love to grow in the most unlikely places. And so today, we're going to take a look at how we channel all of this energy that we have, all of these things that are going on inside of us in healthy ways. But before we do that, if you're comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes and to take a few deep diaphragm breaths in through the nose and then out through the mouth. And as you do so, just allow any of that tension that you're carrying with you to just kind of flow out, your body to relax, and your mind to go where it needs to. Lay down whatever came before this and leave whatever's coming next for next. Just focus on here. What do you need from this time together? And what do you need from me? Go ahead and set your intentions for this time. And then watch for the things that really stand out to you. And when things come to the surface, and we know they will, meet those things with curiosity and love rather than judgment. Continue to breathe. Take a few more deep cleansing breaths. And then as you begin to come back to the space, I invite you to open your eyes. In Matthew 5, verse 9, Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." And then the letter to the Galatian church, Galatians 6:9, Paul says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." I don't know why I am the way that I am. And I'm sure that my wife asks that question on a daily basis. Matter of fact, I think she just said something. So that was humorous. Thanks, babe. But when something happens that creates harm for people that I love, for people that I care about, for the underdog, right? For the people that are kind of outside the majority culture, my instinct is to just jump in and start doing something. That is literally how I'm hardwired. I need to start planning. I need to start doing, for me, actions alleviate anxiety. So if I'm anxious about something, I need to be doing something about that thing. Then I'll feel better about it. Um, I'm a fixer, right? Like if there's an issue, I'm going to fix it. I'm a coach. That's just who I am. I'm hardwired to be that way. I so often just cannot help it. My problem in that becomes when I begin to overextend myself. I'm also that way. I'm all in on something. I'm all in on something. And so I'll find that I overextend myself, and then my energy and my time, my focus begins to get spread too thin amongst those things. And I'm not able to do any one thing the way that I want to or the way that it's needed, right? And with all that is happening right now, the temptation for me is to jump into all of the things, right? Just go now and ask questions later. There's the deep end. Dive in. That is my temptation. And I think as we're in this season of almost preparation, I think it would be wise of all of us to just pause for a moment and just take a step back and to ask a few questions. I think that for me, I think one of the first questions we ask is, how do we live as peacemakers when we feel overwhelmed? I think another question that we can ask is, how do we keep doing what is right when weariness threatens to overtake us? And for the sake of what we're talking about, I really believe that that answer lies in learning to channel our energies towards wholeness and healing. And I think that the first step to doing that is recognizing that that journey starts within us. When something big occurs in life, and if we rush to action without grounding ourselves, we're going to soon find ourselves running on empty. There's a great quote by poet and activist. Now, forgive me if I mispronounce his name, Audre Lorde. Did I say it right? Does anybody know? Okay, I shouldn't have. I did say it right? Okay, good. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. If we are to be true peacemakers, it starts with us caring for ourselves in ways that sustain us. You can't pour from an empty cup, right? Like we've all heard that. You can't draw from an empty well. And Jesus modeled this beautifully. We even talked about this at length just a few weeks ago, that Jesus would often retreat to be into quiet places, to be by himself, to pray, to connect with God, the divine, to recharge. Jesus knew his mission, but he also knew that he needed to be in touch with his inner life to live out that mission. And how we fill our cups is different for everybody. But I think one of the things that we often overlook is that I think filling our own cups starts with learning to feel rather than to escape. That is a great temptation right now, is learning to feel rather than escaping. Because in times of stress or fear, our instinct is to distract ourselves, right? It's to distract ourselves, to numb out, run from uncomfortable feelings. But healing can only begin when we allow ourselves to fully experience and process what we feel. A Quaker author and activist, Parker Palmer, said, "The human soul doesn't want to be advised or fixed or saved. It simply wants to be witnessed. And filling our cup starts by witnessing our own souls with compassion. A few times every week, almost without fail, my son will come to me with his phone and be like, "What do you think of this?" And inevitably, normally, whatever that is some internet YouTube troll like Charlie Kirk on a college campus saying really inflammatory things, right? Tripping these college students' nervous systems, thereby basically rendering them unable to like have a rational thought. And then they take that video and then they upload it to their YouTube channel for views, and that's how they make their living, right? They do that because people like Charlie understand that our bodies are literally designed to do those things. Like our nervous system, those students' nervous system is doing what it needs to protect them. Unfortunately, people like Charlie also will use that knowledge for harm, right? But we don't have to. We don't have to. We can use that knowledge for something good. When our circumstances or the world feels overwhelming, we can recognize that we need tools to ground us. And times like now, our nervous systems are on high alert. We're flooded with anger, stress, fear. And if we want to live as peacemakers and not get overwhelmed, then part of filling our cup is learning to regulate our nervous systems. To do things without growing weary means we have to learn to regulate our nervous systems, to find calm within ourselves, even when the world around us feels very chaotic. And the practice of regulating our nervous systems isn't only therapeutic, it's also deeply spiritual. When we breathe deeply, when we pause, when we center ourselves with whatever that exercise is, we make room for the spirit to enter. And so this practice isn't just about our own personal well-being, although it is. It's also about embodying peace so that we can bring that peace to those around us. In Buddhist teachings, this is something called interbeing, a belief that we are deeply connected, interconnected. And Thich Nhat Hanh teaches peace in oneself, peace in the world. So when we cultivate inner peace, we're contributing to a more peaceful world. So our practice of self-regulation is a way of living out this connection with one another, of preparing ourselves to live with compassion rather than reactivity. And just a note of encouragement, if you're part of our virtual campus, this week's readings, every week that are posted every morning, are going to be on regulating our nervous systems through the lens of spirituality. So keep an eye out for those. And I believe, for me personally, I won't put this on everybody, but I think that once we've learned to fill our cups, once we've learned how to center ourselves, that's when we're actually ready to begin moving into action. Paul's words that we read at the very beginning there in Galatians 6:9 reminds us to persist, to keep showing up and doing what is right. But what does it look like in a world that's as deeply divided and broken as the one we find ourselves in? I think it just looks like showing up for each other in whatever ways we need. I think it means just doing the next right thing, whatever that is. And I think it's committing ourselves to what is going to be the long, slow work of building a better world. Healing and wholeness aren't passive. They invite us to actively engage in tangible ways that make a real difference. And here in a moment, I'm going to invite you to turn your attention to the monitor because we're going to show you a short video on one way that you can make a real impact, that you're being invited to make a real difference right here in Florida, or if you're online, literally anywhere, and making a difference for those that are being targeted, those that are being marginalized, those that are in unsafe spaces. And then afterwards, I'm going to invite Maria Clegg, who works in immigration law to come up and answer a few questions for us. So if you would, turn your attention to the screen.
About 9 years ago, Gladys and I became aware that there was a detention center housing immigrants awaiting their immigration hearings in our rural backyard. Long story, but we got approval from the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. So we rallied some volunteers from all over the community, and we called ourselves Baker Interfaith Friends.
Yes.
Our primary mission is just to provide compassionate conversation and a listening ear with folks who are virtually isolated from any other contact. We call it a ministry of presence. The other function that we serve is to be the eyes and ears of the community in that place, and to expose any conditions or structural injustice that we may see and build awareness of what's happening there. We have met people from all over the world in our years, and the people that we visit are different from what you might be familiar with from stories of immigrants coming in the border. Many of them have been in the United States since they were children. They were brought here as children from various places, and we see a lot of family separation, and that's part of our mission. And it was an outgrowth. We didn't realize we're able to help some of those families that are left behind. Fear is ever present in detention, and that we have learned that faith is a very, very important thing for the people who are in detention. That's what they hold on to. It's what keeps them strong. And someone drew some artwork for us, and in Spanish that says, "Do not fear, because I am your God and I am with you."
So what does that look like?
Right now, since the COVID-19 pandemic, you can visit from home, and it's really kind of nice because you can schedule it anytime you want. But we do try to schedule what we call stakeholder tours at least twice a year. This is followed by a face-to-face group visit. We get to see and visit with people just like this, sitting around and talking and telling their stories. And we have prayer, and we have crying, and we have laughing. We have all that. So, and Gladys can share with you some of her experiences.
Yeah, visiting is for me very stressful, because I talk to people who I know shouldn't be locked up there. Their families are elsewhere. They have really done nothing except come to the United States looking for a better life. So it's difficult to visit. But let me tell you about one of my good friends named Samantha. I met Samantha from Jamaica. Jamaica came to the United States on a student visa, all excited about learning early childhood education. But she also met a man who was, you might say, somewhat of a scoundrel. She had a baby girl by him, and one day while she was standing out holding the baby girl, he took a knife and cut her. She had to be airlifted to the hospital for them to save her life. Things went downhill from there, and she was deported. But we still communicate. And all the times that I was in the hospital, every morning she would send me a little prayer or a little Bible verse, and she said, "I'm praying for you. Let me know how you are," every morning. Never failed. And so this is the kind of relationship you develop.
We want to do some card writing, letter writing events, so that's another way you could participate. Our work will continue, I'm pretty sure, even though we hoped that we would work ourselves out of a job here. But, as long as there's a need, we hope to be there.
Our own Maria, if you want to go ahead and just come on up here. Maria works in immigration law, and then is going to be leaving us next year to do that full time in Orlando. And she is also part of this. And so I thought it would be beneficial just to ask some questions, things that we may not realize or know about this whole process, especially as this is going to be in the forefront for the next few years. So I sent her questions ahead of time so she would be ready. So the first question that I wanted to ask is, like, can you give us some examples of the challenges and obstacles people face when trying to become a U.S. citizen, and then some of the misconceptions that people have about that process?
Yeah. So I think we are told this kind of romanticized idea of what our immigration system is from the time we're children. You see it on the Statue of Liberty. You give me your week, you're tired, you're huddled masses, you're going to breathe free. This romanticized idea of you can come to America and have a better life as long as you work hard, the American dream. The problem with that is not true. That is not what our immigration system is. You can get here, but unless you kind of meet these very narrow requirements, unless you kind of have these desirable sort of traits, are you going to strengthen our economy? Are you going to strengthen our country? We're not going to let you in. So the kind of main categories, so the main three umbrellas that you can fall under is employment-based, family-based, and humanitarian-based. And the definitions, these categories are so narrow that it's very hard to qualify for them. So employment-based, for example, these are people that are highly, highly qualified, internationally renowned in their fields. That's how you get an employment visa. Unless you are known internationally for what you do, you're not going to get an employment visa. You can be a multinational executive, you can get a visa that way. Pay $1 million to an American business, get a visa that way. But outside of that, employment-based is pretty limited for most people. Family-based is what people often think of. You think of people marrying a US citizen, they get their green card that way. And that's true, but unfortunately, we have a very narrow definition of family. It's based on this kind of traditional American nuclear family, husband, wife, children under the age of 21. If you don't fall in that, you are not family. And there are so many cultures, particularly you see Latin American cultures, which is most of the people applying for immigration, their cousins are their siblings, their aunts and uncles are their parents. They get here and ask for relief and they go, that's not your family. And there's no options there. Multi-generational homes, there are some options for that, but if you're trying to get your siblings in, your grandparents, anything like that, there are year-long to decade-long wait lists to get in. There are just this past month applications from certain countries that just started getting processed from the year 2000. 2000. They've been waiting 24 years to just get considered for a visa. I think the shortest wait at the moment is about 3 years, but that changes as administrations come in and put different restrictions on immigration. So it's a years-long process, and you are not allowed to be in the United States until you're approved. And then there's the humanitarian-based asylum, refugee status, things like that, but those also are very restricted.
So how does the current system impact vulnerable groups like families, asylum seekers, children? And then to tag onto that, what does that mean for those fleeing violence and persecution?
Yeah. So these are like kind of humanitarian sort of issues. The humanitarian-based system, the primary form of humanitarian relief is asylum and refugee status. I think what people don't understand about asylum is you're fleeing danger, you're fleeing harm, you're fleeing violence. Most of that is not going to qualify for asylum status. The way we define asylum is you are fleeing persecution on account of your race, your religion, nationality, or political opinion. So persecution, that's an issue right there. This implies a very severe level of harm. This is not just danger. This is not just harm. This is severe. Where do you draw the line on you were hurt enough? But then the bigger issue is that harm has to be because of one of those protected classes. You needed to be targeted because of your race. You needed to be targeted because of your political opinion. And the majority of violence that you see people fleeing from is not on account of these. Think gang violence. Gangs are not targeting people because of who they believe or what they look like. It's, who do you know? What do you know? What can I get from you? And so that doesn't qualify for asylum status in most circumstances. Natural disasters, domestic violence, many, many casualties of war. Just because you're caught in the crossfire does not mean you were a target because of one of those categories. And so unfortunately, when you think humanitarian relief, you think, oh, people fleeing war, right? But unless it was for one of those reasons, it doesn't qualify. And we have very few other humanitarian forms of relief. They're even more niche and often temporary. I wish I could say there was a happy but that's it.
So the last question that I sent her was, for Christians, why should understanding and supporting fair immigration practices be important?
These are our neighbors. If these aren't our neighbors, who are? Our immigration system is set up to ask, how can you help us? Not how can we help you? And so when I hear the response, like, well, why don't they just enter the legal way? Drives me crazy because I'm like, that question is asking, why don't you benefit us economically enough? Why don't you fit our definition of family? Why weren't you hurt the right way? And Christ doesn't call us to that. He calls us to feed and clothe the stranger, not ask the stranger, are you worthy of our help?
Yeah, I know. What do I say after that? Thank you. All right. Um, yeah. And I think too that for any that are, the pushback would be, well, we're not advocating for, like a Christian government, and we're not. I would absolutely not advocate for those things. But as Christians, right, as people trying to follow the way of Jesus, or however you want to categorize that, I think what you said there was incredibly powerful, that we should care because these are our neighbors. And as I was thinking through that, one of the things that I came to really grasp is, looking back in my journey of deconstruction and then reconstruction, this understanding that our healing is not separate from the healing of the world. One of my favorite authors and theologians, he's a Celtic theologian, John Philip Newell, put it this way: the way of love is to recognize that we are all connected, all one. Our healing is connected to the healing of the earth and the healing of one another. We are not separate. And if that's true, then my healing is tied to yours, and your healing is tied to mine, which also means that our healing is tied to the healing of all of those out there, including the ones sitting in the detention center now, and including the ones walking around in red hats. This healing is the bringing of the kingdom of heaven to earth. When we care for our own souls, when we seek healing, when we act from places of wholeness, we resist the forces that try to divide and dehumanize. It is the soft power of resilience that we see from the dandelion that we talked about last week and this morning. You can stomp it, you can spray it, pull it up, and yet time after time it will continue to come back, ever widening the smallest of cracks, allowing more space for others to grow, for love to flourish. And within this metaphor, dandelions don't react to what's going on around them. They just do what they do, regardless of the circumstances. And so I think that when we begin to live that way, when we begin to heal our egos and psyches to the point where you're not going to get me to react, when you can delete the text or the response and just type the words okay, I think that's when we start to become peacemakers, not just in name, but in spirit and truth. If you're new, we end each gathering with a time of observation and reflection. And we do that to give us the space that we need to process, to listen to our bodies, to listen to the spirit of what we just talked about. And so the band will come back up and play so it's not awkward. Lights are going to be turned down so that it helps create a little bit of intimacy. And then today I am going to ask you a few questions to help guide that process. And we'll close together with prayer, and we'll have a short time for a communion, which is open to anyone willing, open to all. And each week we use that time to just kind of really reflect on the teaching. And today, let it remind us that it is through the life, death, and resurrection of Christ that we can experience healing. So just like at the beginning of our gathering, I invite you to close your eyes and take a few deep breaths, allowing yourself to feel what you need to feel. And so for my first question, what were you needing from this time together? What were you needing from me? Did those things come to you, and what is it saying? If not, why not? And what is that saying? In your life, just in your life, where are you trying to pour from an empty cup? And then right now, I want you to name one thing that you know and that you will do to help fill that cup. My next question for you is, in what areas of your life are you allowing outside forces to trip your nervous system? And how can you better regulate those emotions? What tools do you need? And when you're ready to actively participate in our collective healing, what is just one way that comes to your mind right now? And let me encourage you to write that down, put it in your notes, whatever you need to do. Pray with me. Maker of all things new, we come to you tired from the struggles we see in the world and the burdens that we carry within ourselves. Yet we are reminded of your boundless love and your call to be agents of healing. And help us to start by tending to our own hearts. Teach us to fill our cups with compassion, kindness, and grace for ourselves and for others. And may we learn to sit with our pain, our joy, our doubts, and our hopes, knowing that you are with us in each moment. As we go from this place, may we channel our energy into things that bring healing and wholeness and peace. Guide us in being gentle with one another, but fierce in the pursuit of justice. Let our hands, our words, and our lives be instruments of your healing in this hurting world. Forgive us for things done and for things left undone. Give us eyes to see and ears to hear. Bring comfort to the afflicted, healing to the broken, and freedom to the chained. In the name of the one who shows us the way, amen. If you're not part of the virtual campus, consider this an invitation on Facebook to become part of that, whether in person or online. Because this week, I think one of the things that you're going to find is some practical applications about how to regulate things. And one of the things that I just want to say, and then we'll read this benediction and make sure that you talk to one of them that's part of the Baker Faith if you're interested in finding out more about what they do. Is I think one of the hardest things that we have to do in anything that we want to become is uprooting an old habit and creating a new one. I mean, if we're wanting to learn how to do these things, if we're learning how to ground ourselves, we have to stop doing old things and start doing new things. And that's really, really difficult. And the first step of that is building a new structure, because we all want to be those things, but you never rise to the level of your goals. You always fall to the level of your structures. And so it starts with building a structure. So I'm going to encourage you tomorrow, start a new structure by reading what we put in there. Okay. That's one really easy way and learning to regulate your system, especially coming into the season that we're going to come into. There's going to be lots of yelling, unmasked cruelty. And your attention is going to be drawn into all kinds of things. Where do we channel our energies that are going to produce the most good for the most people? And the only way to do that is if we're regulated, right? And that starts with creating new things. I'll shut up. All right, let me read this. We'll get out of here. As you walk from this place, may you carry the peace of God within you, a light to warm and steady your heart. May you be filled with the courage to mend what is broken, to lift up the weary, and to walk in the sacred way of wholeness. May the Creator bless you, the Healer renew you, and the Spirit of life surround you this day and always. Amen. Get out of here. Go love on some people.